Stephen,
Andrew.
do you fancy spending a quiet night inside number 9?
Oh, go on then.
So we're diving into the script book again, series 4 to 6 we're doing at the moment. And this is series 4, episode 2, Bernie Clifton's dressing room. I've been looking forward to this. Always love going back and revisiting this episode. Absolute treat.
There's little bits of it that just make me beam, a big beaming grin.
Yeah. I was just watching it with headphones on, and I don't know, I was just totally absorbed in it as I was doing a rewatch and following it along with the script. Although I found it incredibly difficult at times to keep up with, because there's some very fast moving moments. It's like, I don't know if they're following the script or not. It's really difficult.
Roll it back.
Yeah, exactly.
Not necessarily how it was meant to be watched, was it?
No, it's not a follow along sort of thing, is it? But and I suppose so. As always with these script book episodes, recommend going, and if you haven't listened to our first episode, kind of going into Bernie Clifton's dressing room in a little bit more depth, then do that. We're going to try not to repeat ourselves, but as happened last week, we can't remember what we said originally.
This is advice that we should ourselves heed.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
Before you record this episode, make sure you pop back to listen to our first run through of Bernie Clifton's dressing room to see what we thought then.
Yeah. How do you feel about going back and listening to yourself in that sort of way?
Awful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It doesn't appeal to me, really.
No. I think that would probably, if I was forced to do it, I think it would probably be against some sort of human rights laws.
Yeah, I feel that. Which kind of the whole premise of starting this podcast in the first place was to create a podcast about Inside Number 9, because there isn't one, and I really fancied listening to one, but I don't listen to this.
So you say that was your aim. I, however, had another aim, a slightly possibly more niche aim, to become the most number one absurd podcast in the world
of all time.
And you know what we've done? We've only gone and done it.
Hey!
Absurd.
There's nothing absurd about this.
You've come out with some nonsense.
Yeah, so congratulations. We've
to us.
We've hit that much desired milestone.
It's all been worth it.
Yeah.
It's all been building to
Thanks to all of you listening for making that possible. Really appreciate it.
Dream come true.
So Bernie Clifton's dressing room. Anything that sort of really jumped out at you as you read the script and watched?
No, and there were bits and pieces. Some things that I noticed had sort of changed slightly. Some bits that didn't make it. I don't know whether it was down to time, but last week we had the kind of, I don't want to say excuse, but the reasoning of, right, this had to be quite tight because of the nature of the episode of Zanzibar. It had to be quite tight to script. But opening this again, I don't know whether it is the case that they are now used to this and they're writing it knowing how it's going to look. But no, there were some things to look at, I think.
Yeah. And I wonder whether that was also to do with the fact that I guess the episode is all of these little sketches / pieces. They're probably bits that they had very much imagined in their minds, or even kind of played out before. So they were pretty fixed and firm. So then it's the changes seem to be like lines being swapped from different places and sort of getting a feel for, okay, that works better if we do this first and then say that or whatever.
I felt like a lot of the changes I did spot were things about some of the directions. Some of the directions were a bit different, and I guess that was building the character up as it was being filmed, and certain directions maybe didn't fit in terms of what they were trying to build, and making sort of little adjustments to facial expressions and things like that that are in the script but don't play like that.
It's like from the beginning there's a direction about Len taking his coat off and Tommy getting a whiff of BO, and like that's not in the...
I did wonder whether they kind of felt like that was just a bit unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like you've built enough of a picture of Len and who he is straight away just by the way he looks. Do you need to add almost a layer of unkindness?
That's exactly what I thought, yeah.
Is that just a bit unkind?
And in the context of Len being not actually there, and they haven't seen each other for 30 years, that's probably not a part of Tommy's memory. Like,
that's true, actually.
That he smells like...
Yeah, that's true. And quite clever, actually, because what they've realised there is that possibly isn't a sense that he would have. You wouldn't... Yeah, you're imagining that whiff of BO.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, on a general point, I think I was really, and I suppose because it's a very joke-driven episode, there's sort of, the set pieces and everything, I realised how important the performance is, because when you see everything written down, it just looks a bit like a stage play that, like, and if you hadn't seen the episode, I would imagine a completely different thing on screen to what you actually get. And it just spoke to me so much of how important embodying the characters and embodying the scripts really is. And again, I guess how Stephen Rees would have really known what those characters were. And as they were writing the script, they would know that, they would have a real feel for that. But then if you're writing for other actors, it must be like to actually convey what it is that you're wanting them to bring to the performance. Does take a lot of...
Oh, completely. And I did notice just then when I opened the book, this is a very short cast list. It's just the three, with that little cameo from Sian Clifton at the end as the daughter. This is very much a very intimate, because the use of like the pictures of them in everything, and those old pictures of those two together, and like at times when he was looking through some of those things, I was thinking, did they do the the punk ventriloquist thing at some point? Like, that's a very good picture, and that
looks totally authentic, doesn't it? Yeah.
Is that genuine? Is that something they did pull at some point? I don't want to say it's semi-autobiographical, because I don't think Steve's generally ruined anything by being blind drunk on a regular basis. But I guess you're writing a story about two people that have got a very close working and performing relationship. And so you must kind of at least touch on certain feelings and emotions. You can't be completely detached from that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's probably that sort of meta narrative going on, and you hear there's like the references to, taking getting somebody to take the videos down off YouTube because he can't be seen having, dressing up as Tina Turner with tights on his head, ping pong balls. And it's like, that's a direct reference to something that is on the internet.
Yeah, but he may not be happy within a few years' time.
No. So yeah, I think, and it reminded me a little bit there of last weekend when I was thinking about sentimental episodes about the two of them, and how, last weekend, for the first half of it, could have been like the last episode of Inside Number 9 as a real tribute to their relationship and everything. Same with Bernie Clifton's dressing room. Like, if that wasn't just the second episode of series 4, like that could be the 6th episode of series 9 and be a really fitting end to the whole thing.
Yeah. They blew it. They went too early.
They went too early. Yeah.
If you could have your time again, would you not release Bernie Clifton's dressing room until the very last episode of Inside Number 9?
And the catch is, if you hadn't released Bernie Clifton's dressing room when you did, you might not have been commissioned for series 5. So, yes, I mean, just little discrepancies that I noticed in that first sketch. When he's doing all of the accents, and the question, "Are you all right?" comes from. Is that from Tommy? Are you all right? To Len.
So.
And that sort of speaks to some of the things that have been dropped, which is almost I don't want to say over the top, but like a more obvious or overt reference to the kind of drinking and Len's problems.
Yeah.
Which again may speak to what we said earlier about actually, like, this isn't necessarily about that. That's a subtext to it, but this is not focusing on that, because there's a lot of stuff about the drinking that gets dropped out as well, whether that's based around time or actually whether it's a...
Yeah, I don't know whether there was just a feeling of just overdoing it on the drinking stuff. Just wasn't necessary, because that it was when they were setting up for the bottles sketch that he asks about. You could have had non-alcoholic, and that's disappeared entirely. There was something in the first sketch as well. There was mentions of Len making his face. And there were a couple of different faces, a goofy face, an outraged face, but actually he does the same gurn every single time. Like, that's his face that he does. And that was what was winding Tommy up. He wasn't making all these different angry... He was pretty one note when it came to all that stuff. His go-to was make the stupid face to try and get the laugh. So like faux outrage and goofiness wouldn't really cut it. It was just his, that's what I do. I turn to the audience and make my stupid face.
Yeah. Yeah, which again, I suppose, it begs the question when you're thinking, is Len just a figment of Tommy's imagination, which obviously he is, and is that Tommy's memory of like, oh, he's doing that again. He's claiming the laugh with that stupid face. He does. There's no subtlety to his performance. He just,
you can see it. I can see him doing it right
constantly.
Now. It's winding me right up.
Yeah, exactly. That's all he does. Yeah, when he does that comedy routine with the hat and the coat.
I've noted the direction on that, which is that he just improvises a comedy routine. Is that exactly what that was?
Well, it made me think. I can imagine in a writing session where Steve and Reese were writing together, and Steve just does that like as a off the cuff thing.
Yeah,
and they're like, "We've got to include that in something." Like, that's pretty funny.
It's so good. That's the bit that just makes me grin, because there's this really nice feeling of Tommy feeling nostalgic and just watching. That's like the best of Len that he's watching there, there. This just really clever physical comedy stuff. And you could just sort of tune out everything else. It's just that quiet moment of watching him do his thing that I thought was really nice. But yeah, the fact it wasn't scripted as it's literally scripted as improvises a comedy routine.
Yeah. Unless that's just like, oh, I can't be bothered to describe this.
I mean, you say that, but then the amount of
it's true.
description that goes into the bottles on the wall is really quite extreme. It's so tightly. It's like, were you guys worried that you weren't going to know how you did this? You had to write it out line by line. Tommy stands at the right-hand side with a white-gloved hand appears to be holding the right-hand end of the wall. Tommy looks at the left-hand side of the wall. He appears to stretch himself over to the left, leaving the gloved right hand where it is as his head moves to the other side. We then see his white-gloved left hand grip the left-hand side of the wall. Tommy then moves his head back to the middle, giving the impression that he has comically long arms. That's... Then it keeps going.
Like, it does. It is so detailed. I must admit, I started reading that and I was like, I am not
just watch this.
I can't do both. I can't follow this along. I trust them that they've done what they said they were going to do.
And that's what's weird about some things are just very briefly sort of referred to in terms of direction, whereas that is just a solid, it's almost a page in my script book of describing what's going on in that sketch.
Maybe one of them was in charge of writing the instructions for one routine and the other was in charge of the other. And one of them's a little bit more
I think Steve was in charge for his one.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I can imagine Reese being a little bit more specific.
So I think you should... So Steve, you're going to sit down next to the coat with the hat hanging on the top. You're going to slide your arm through the arm of the coat, and then you're going to walk it up your leg. You're then going to pretend that you're being assaulted by a coat.
Reese, I'll improvise.
I'll just improvise it.
It's fine. Let's go for a coffee break. Yeah, it reminds me of when I did A-level music, and I did a performance recital on the drums, which was heavy metal through the ages. So I did.
That's what I really think of you.
Yeah, cheers, man. Yeah, so I did I did Deep Purple, Metallica, and Rage Against the Machine, and each, because you had to like notate everything that you did, so that the examiner, who was this what seemed like a very old lady at the time. I don't know how old she actually was. She was probably 42. The age I am now. She had this sort of wild, frizzy grey hair. And she was just sat at this desk in front of me, just unaccompanied drum kit, just smashing out heavy metal songs. But like I had to submit musical notation. Mm-hmm. So I did bits and bobs, but most of it was just drum solo, improvise for 8 bars. And I got away with it.
Well, this is the thing. Like, if you write down what you're planning to do and that's not what happens, you've made a rod for your own back. If you say, I'm just going to play and see what happens, even if it was planned, if you deviate, it doesn't matter. Exactly.
And I was able to support that with like evidence that different performances of those songs had different parts in. So it was like, the improvisation is
any of them.
It's a fundamentally important part that you never do the same thing twice.
Always keep them guessing.
Exactly.
Never let them know your next move.
Yeah. So that reminded me a bit of that. Yeah.
Flashback for you.
There you go.
And they say this podcast's absurd.
I also really liked the line, because there's a bunch of stuff that just I think goes over my head, or has gone over my head, because things are so quick. Mm-hmm. But the line about when they're talking about going on Britain's Got Talent, and maybe they could use their real names, and nobody will know who we are. Like I just love the idea of, the stage names being, obviously people know who you are then, and if you use actual names, nobody's going to know who that is.
Yeah.
There's something quite nicely absurd about that idea to some degree.
There was also another bit of direction that I liked that said, it was when they were talking about the names actually, and they were doing the up and down cheese and crackers, as though da-da-das is an actual thing that anyone reading that will know.
Yeah.
He da-dee-das it out. What does that mean?
Yeah.
That's not a direction. That's da-dee-da. Cheese and crackers. Crackers and cheese. It's only going up because you're making it go up.
That's so good. Yeah, there's the exposition about at the start of the ventriloquist
Vincent
sketch.
Vomit. But we don't find out that he's called Vincent Vomit.
Just Vincent. We just know he's called Vincent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't know
The
there's a
introduction of the
whole
school and him. All right, boys and girls, as you know, here at St. Crispin's School for the Exceptionally Gifted, we have a new boy starting with us today. His name is Vincent Vomit, and I'm sure you'll all make him feel very welcome.
so that's all missing, isn't it?
Why? Why is this character started at this really very prestigious private school?
Do you think there's a reason why they left that out, or maybe
I
just
don't know.
unnecessary?
Was Vincent Vomit just a little unnecessary? I guess if you're going for the old punk rock name, Sid Vicious, Vincent Vomit.
Vincent Vomit. Yeah. Yeah, so that's all left out, and then it just starts with, so boys and girls, this is Vincent, say hello Vincent. And actually that's enough. Like it's
that's fine.
Yeah.
This thing's already mental. It doesn't need any extra layers of why it's mental.
Yeah. I do. I love that. I love that scene as well. That's so good. Because Tommy says, like, you know, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm. I can't bear it.
Yeah, and there's a really nice sort of double meaning around that. You know, obviously when you've seen the whole episode, you go back and watch it, like, you know,
we
the
can't
context
do
of
this,
why
Len.
he's there. Yeah,
no, you can't. You literally can't. He's not there.
Can't do this. Can't bear it. Like it's, and there's almost this. From Tommy's perspective, there's like the shame. There's kind of the embarrassment of the jokes themselves. Like we can't do this anymore, or they aren't funny. Like these don't work. And there's also the shame or the regret of, I wish this had worked. The double act. I wish we'd have been able to do this. We can't do this anymore. And I can't bear that. And I can't bear like this moment, kind of reimagining or going back and doing these things again, because it's just too hard. So it's a really kind of poignant double meaning or triple meaning even to that. I kind of like that.
Yeah. So past that, it's fairly on script. Because that's kind of the where they kind of end up with their arguments. But then it's the next bit is the brown bottles wall game, which, like we said, is incredibly tightly scripted. But this is where we lose certain things about the drinking.
I think it's a little bit earlier.
Oh, so that bit was a little bit earlier. Yeah, there's a line in here that I guess was supposed to be drunken ramblings once Len's kind of made his way through most of the beers. And I think it's kind of got to the point, like I say, where I think he's just supposed to be sort of rambling drunkly towards Tommy. And they've cut out this line where he says, you know, I've always loved you and I'd do anything for you, you know. It just goes. And I don't know whether they felt that was just a bit too much. I don't know, that it wouldn't be fair to have that thrown out as a line as a drunken, like, I don't know, because part of me feels like it would have been a nice thing to have been said, but then I guess,
but again,
if Tommy feels like Len didn't really appreciate it, like Len didn't really appreciate what he was trying to do for him, then maybe he wouldn't. Yeah,
it's not going to be a message that would come from Len projected through Len back to Tommy in his own mind. Because I don't think
in fact, he would probably only now do that having opened that envelope.
Yeah. Because the rest of it is Len didn't appreciate it. He didn't understand why they had to do it. And there's a resentment from Len to Tommy. And that's Tommy's understanding of their relationship is, you know, Len doesn't love him, or he doesn't get why this was necessary.
That actually makes sense in when you see what they swapped it with. When he says you'd need a spanner to get 50p out of his hand.
Yeah.
And actually, that's how he feels like Len maybe saw him, was tight-fisted and still going on about his 25 quid from about Bernie Clifton's dressing room. That's the drunken line that possibly makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, just reflecting on that, it's like, there's some real thought gone into that, into, what works beyond, just the story as it's unfolding in itself. It's like what works within the context of, the fact that this is just Tommy's projections of Len. This is Tommy's memories of Len and his way of trying to process and reconcile everything that's gone on. And it isn't actually Len.
Yeah, you have to be really careful that the way you write that is consistent, and like this feels as though there is a couple of things that almost slipped through that they caught and went, no, that wouldn't go through his mind. This is probably more likely what he would project.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's really good point. Yeah. Yeah. It was the end of that ventriloquist's sketch where there's some stuff about the drink that got dropped. Where Len says, "Just do the last bit, the drink bit. I can see your lips move. Have a drink and then make me speak." And it just goes to, I think it just cuts to him just gargling, because then he's saying supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Gone.
And then he spits out the remaining bits.
Did Disney
maybe they had
you can't say that word. It'll cost you.
Yeah, and it's just sort of, it's just him gargling the beer and then spitting it out, and that's it. Which again is enough. The reference that, because I think in the whole content, and I wonder whether they took it out in, that one spoke to me of being taken out in editing, because you can see a little cut. So whether it was afterwards they were thinking, actually that we don't, the message is spoken, like people know he's got a drinking issue, and that doesn't have to be a prevalent part of Tommy's memories in that sense. So there's a major change here. Joe Pasquale, as current as in the script, it says a Rubik's Cube.
Did that just feel a bit dry?
A bit, meh.
Yeah. Let's replace it with
Kajagoogoo.
Kajagoogoo. Too shy.
Yeah.
Hush, eye to eye.
Can't say I'm massively familiar with the work of Kajagoogoo.
Are you not? That's about as far as I go with the
apart from that song. I went and had a listen.
Did you?
That has I think that's had like 65 million listens on Spotify.
It's a big one.
Their next most popular one is about 63 million shy.
I mean, you could argue that if they're pulling in those numbers, they're not dated. They are current.
They are.
613
613,000 monthly listeners.
Well, so both Kajagoogoo and the Rubik's Cube are still doing numbers right now, I think.
They are.
Probably more than Joe Pasquale.
Yeah. I was...
Any monthly listens on Joe Pasquale you've got there for us?
I'll just get my Joe Pasquale statistics up.
You mean you don't hold them in a special part of your brain?
So Joe Pasquale has 48 monthly listeners. I don't know what this is on Spotify. Joe Pasquale Live.
And to be honest, that's actually more than I expected.
A 2004
Sorry,
album.
Joe, if you're listening.
Is this actually him? I think it is. Yeah.
I am surprised that 48 people tune into that on Spotify.
So yeah, maybe Kajagoogoo are actually a little bit more current
than Joe Pasquale.
So that was a major change. And as you say, Rubik's Cubes, I mean,
they're still doing well. They are doing big numbers.
I don't think they'll ever go out of
millions of monthly listens every month.
Let me just check. One monthly listener.
One. And I think that may be Mr. Rubik Cube himself.
I wonder whether. Yeah, I don't think that's the actual cube, is it?
No, no, I don't. This has gone down a. You've deviated.
Um,
Oh, there was one word I picked out mainly because I thought it was a strange word to use, especially when we've had interactions with Reese ourselves that I think would be a better word. Babyish.
hmm,
I found that odd. It's babyish. He was talking about cheese and crackers, I think.
yeah.
It's a babyish name. Childlike was there, sat there waiting.
I was wondering about that, and I think,
Childish. I don't like the word babyish.
but there's something. There's something. It's almost onomatopoeic in the sense of babyish is quite a babyish word.
Yeah, it
Like
is.
and it has a. It evokes something that childish or childlike wouldn't.
But that's the Tommy word there would have been childish.
Yeah, that's
It's
true. Yeah.
childish, not it's babyish.
Is childlike with a hyphen or one word? What was your debate with Reese about that one?
I can't remember. Ch- I said something and he just responded with childlike hyphenated.
Yeah. I think you were both wrong and you were both right.
That's possibly the most on the fence answer that anyone has ever given to anyone.
Uh,
And then
yeah.
from there, really, it kind of runs through.
Yeah.
And it's just lovely. The end's really lovely.
It's a absolutely fantastic episode. I never get bored of watching this one.
Because it just resolves. He gets what he needed at the end. Because all he needed was to know that Len appreciated him. And that his memories of the worst of Len weren't all there was. He got something else. And that meant that he could let him go at peace. And I guess that's why it's nice to then see him sort of fully embracing the double act again at the end. He's back.
Yeah, that performance at the end is just lovely. It's just really beautiful. And yeah, and I love, I made a note about like how that, the repeated last line with the little bits of dancing and stuff, and then it resolves out into that sort of, it's almost a bit of a cliche, but it doesn't come, it's not a cliche in that setting where it resolves into a reverb, like the song just stops and it echoes on, and then Len disappears, and then Tommy's sort of brought back to reality, and then the organ starts playing.
But then he's also, so I think it could have been different. They could have gone all out with that becoming a huge song and dance number that kind of everyone's then in stage outfits and it's really massively produced and that's all going on in his head, that they're now both in top hats and tails and it's like in a ballroom and stuff. Like it could have done that.
Yeah.
The fact it was kept there in that hall with them just in
the two of them.
they were already, I think that was quite important because it could have gone bombastic, but I don't think that would have been true to the way he was remembering it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't even perfectly performed. Like there's bits where they're singing slightly out of time and and I think that's really deliberate, but it's the change of body language and the change of the facial expressions and stuff, and it's like they are enjoying it now. Like it's not, we're revisiting these things through a kind of resentment or exactly. It's we're fully embodying this thing that actually meant the world to both of us, and kind of putting that to bed. Yeah, really beautifully.
Lovely.
Yeah. The other thing, the change of reference was Sid Little is going to be there instead of Joe Longthorne.
Neither of which am I really aware of?
No, I mean, Little and Large are a double act that I. It kind of comes back to people love remembering ththings from the 70s, except for these guys on this, the U Tree people. I thought that was almost a nod to that, like, oh, there's, because I'm not aware of Joe Longthorne at all.
No.
I kind of I searched for him afterwards. And I was like, I think I recognise his face as another sort of, all round entertainer kind of person.
Yeah.
But yeah, also Sid Little was, because I think Little was the Tommy and Large was the Len. So whether that's deliberate or not, like, just felt like, oh, there's someone who gets Tommy, like gets that Tommy role there that,
I like that Jeanette Cranky's brought back up as well, having been in there earlier, not even able to look them in the eye. Is then brought back for the funeral. Yeah. But they'll have a box that they'll have to move.
Yeah, it's lovely. And the only other thing that I kind of made a note of, which we may have picked up before, was the line in the song about misery might let you win a BAFTA. And Steve won, I think it was best male performer in a comedy TV show or something at the BAFTAs for this role. Obviously after it was made.
Wasn't Is he incredibly nice, prescient or
foreboding success is the phrase I wrote down. And whether that is just we know we've got something here that could, because equally it is like misery might let you win a BAFTA, and it's all about the fun, joy, laughter being more important. And actually this episode does have a very lamenty quality to it.
And it won a BAFTA.
And it won a BAFTA. And I think it won a BAFTA probably because of that. I guess it's a rich array. You've managed to capture all sorts of emotional stuff in that character. But it is also incredibly funny. It's a masterpiece, this.
It is.
I just think it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have anything more to say.
No, I think we've covered everything. I think you did quite well.
Great. Well, if you have anything, if you've read the script book and you notice anything, especially in the stage direction with brown bottles, because I gave up trying to follow that. If there's anything you've noticed, then please do get in touch with us. Email us, aquietnightinside09@gmail.com. Get in touch via Twitter @AQNIN9.
Next week's going to be a tough one.
What have we got next week?
Once Removed.
Oh, wow.
So that's going to be all over the place.
So many time issues.
Jumps.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan would be proud.
Well, I'll speak to you for that one then.
Speak to you soon.
Have a good week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.